For as long as Daniel could remember, his mother's approval had always felt just out of reach. As a child, he believed that if he studied harder, helped more around the house, and put everyone else's needs before his own, she would finally look at him with pride. Instead, every achievement seemed invisible. If he earned good grades, she praised his younger brother Ethan for doing slightly better. If Daniel fixed something around the house, she reminded him that it was expected, not extraordinary. Years passed, but nothing changed. After their father passed away, Daniel quietly gave up his dream of attending graduate school. He accepted a demanding job with long hours and lived modestly in a small apartment across town. Everyone assumed he struggled to make ends meet because he never bought expensive clothes, drove an old car, and rarely joined family vacations. No one knew the truth. Every month, most of his paycheck disappeared before he spent a single dollar on himself. He never complained. One Sunday evening, his mother insisted on hosting a large family dinner. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and close family friends gathered around the table, filling the house with laughter and conversation. Daniel arrived carrying a homemade dessert, hoping, as always, that the evening would pass peacefully. His younger brother Ethan pulled into the driveway in a brand new luxury SUV. The entire family rushed outside to admire it. "Look at Ethan," one uncle exclaimed. "Now that's what success looks like." Their mother beamed with pride. "My younger son has always known how to make something of himself," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Daniel smiled politely and stayed quiet. Inside the dining room, stories about promotions, vacations, investments, and expensive purchases filled the air. Daniel listened more than he spoke. Then his aunt turned toward him. "So, Daniel," she asked with a friendly smile, "how's work going?" Before he could answer, his mother let out a small laugh. "Oh, Daniel," she said dismissively, "he's still working that ordinary office job. Honestly, he's always been the disappointment of the family." The room became awkwardly quiet. She continued, "Look at him, nearly 35 years old, driving that old car, wearing the same jackets for years. If he had any ambition, he'd be successful like Ethan." A few relatives exchanged uncomfortable glances. Others chuckled softly, assuming it was harmless teasing. Each word landed like a stone in Daniel's chest. He looked down at his untouched plate, remembering every birthday he had skipped buying gifts for himself because someone else's bills needed to be paid. Every overtime shift, every lonely holiday spent working instead of resting. Still, he said nothing. His mother shook her head dramatically. "I honestly don't know where I went wrong raising him. Sometimes I wonder if he'll ever amount to anything." The silence around the table grew heavier. Daniel slowly placed his fork beside his plate. For the first time in years, he lifted his eyes and looked directly at his mother. His voice remained calm, so calm that everyone leaned forward to hear him. "Mom," he said quietly, "can I ask you one question?" She folded her arms. "What is it?" Daniel took a slow breath. "If I'm such a failure." He paused just long enough for every conversation in the room to stop. "Then who's been paying your bills every month?" The smile vanished from his mother's face. The color drained from it. Around the table, forks froze in midair. No one spoke, no one even breathed. The silence that followed was louder than every insult Daniel had endured over the years. The dining room remained frozen in silence. Daniel's question echoed through everyone's mind. "Then who's been paying your bills every month?" His mother stared at him in disbelief, searching his face for any sign that he was joking. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice unsteady. Daniel leaned back in his chair without raising his voice. "I'm talking about the mortgage payments that never stopped after Dad passed away, the electricity bills that were always paid before the due date, the grocery account at the neighborhood market, the medical bills after your surgery 2 years ago, and Ethan's university tuition." Every face around the table slowly turned toward his mother. She blinked repeatedly. That wasn't you," she whispered. "The bank told me an anonymous supporter wanted to help the family." Daniel nodded. "I asked them not to reveal my name." His younger brother Ethan frowned. "Wait, you're saying you've been paying all of that?" Daniel quietly reached into his worn leather bag and placed a neatly organized folder on the table. "I never planned to show anyone this," he said. But since we're discussing what I've accomplished with my life, I think everyone deserves the truth. Inside the folder were years of bank statements, payment confirmations, hospital receipts, tuition records, and mortgage transfers. Each payment carried the same account number. Each one came from Daniel. His aunt slowly covered her mouth. "Oh my goodness!" An uncle picked up one of the statements. "This goes back almost 8 years." Another relative whispered, "That's hundreds of thousands of dollars." Daniel nodded. "I worked nights. I accepted every overtime shift I could. I skipped vacations, drove an old car, and wore the same clothes because every extra dollar went here." His mother reached for one of the receipts with trembling hands. She recognized the date immediately. It was the month she had cried because she thought the bank was going to take the house. She remembered praying for a miracle. The miracle had been sitting across from her all along. Tears began filling her eyes. I didn't know," she whispered. Daniel looked at her gently. "I know you didn't." Ethan lowered his head in shame. "I always wondered who helped us," he admitted. "Mom used to call them our guardian angel." Daniel smiled sadly. "I never wanted thanks. I just wanted our family to be okay." The room that had been full of laughter only minutes earlier now felt unbearably heavy. Every relative remembered the cruel words spoken at dinner. Failure, disappointment, he'll never amount to anything. Those insults now sounded painfully empty. Daniel's oldest cousin finally spoke. "So while we were praising Ethan's success, Daniel was carrying the entire family," another relative finished. His mother broke into tears. She looked at every receipt, every payment, every sacrifice she had never noticed. Memories flooded back. Daniel refusing birthday gifts, working through holidays, arriving late to family gatherings because he had extra work, and always insisting he was fine. She had mistaken sacrifice for failure. She slowly stood and walked toward him. Her lips trembled. "Daniel, I don't know how to ask for your forgiveness." Daniel looked at her with tired eyes that carried years of quiet heartbreak. "You don't have to say anything tonight, Mom." He gently closed the folder. "I spent years hoping you'd see my worth." He paused before adding softly, "I just never imagined I'd have to prove it with receipts." No one at the table could hold back their tears. For the first time in years, the truth had spoken louder than anyone's judgment. No one touched the dessert. No one reached for another drink. The warmth that had filled the dining room earlier had disappeared, replaced by a silence heavy with guilt. Every relative looked from Daniel to his mother, unsure of what to say after learning the truth. It was Daniel's aunt who finally broke the silence. "You called him a failure," she said softly, looking at Daniel's mother. "Yet he was the one keeping this family together." Another uncle nodded in agreement. "We all praised Ethan because we saw his success, but Daniel never showed us what he was sacrificing. He carried everyone without asking for applause." Daniel remained quiet. He had not revealed the truth to embarrass anyone. He had simply answered a question that should never have been asked. His mother wiped away her tears. "I never knew," she whispered. "If I had known." Daniel interrupted her gently. "If you had known, would you have treated me differently?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The question hurt because she didn't know the answer herself. Ethan slowly stood from his chair and walked toward his older brother. "I owe you more than an apology," he said, his voice breaking. "My education, my apartment after college, even the laptop I thought Mom somehow managed to buy. It was all because of you, wasn't it?" Daniel gave a small nod. "You had dreams. I didn't want money to stop you from reaching them." Ethan lowered his head, "And while I accepted everyone's praise, you accepted everyone's criticism." For the first time in years, the younger brother embraced Daniel without hesitation. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Daniel hugged him back. "You never asked me to make those sacrifices. None of this is your fault." His mother watched the moment with tears streaming down her face. She stepped closer, her hands trembling. "Daniel, please, give me a chance to make things right." He looked at her with calm eyes. "I've spent years trying to earn your love. I finally realized love isn't something that should have to be earned." Those words struck harder than any angry accusation could have. He reached into his pocket and placed a small envelope on the dining table. Inside were the automatic payment confirmations for every bill he had been covering. I've already canceled all future payments, Daniel said quietly. The room fell silent once again. What? His mother gasped. Starting next month, the house, utilities, insurance, and every other expense will be your responsibility. She stared at him in disbelief. You're leaving us. I'm not abandoning anyone, Daniel replied. I'm simply stepping away from a role I was never appreciated for. He picked up his coat and the worn leather bag that had carried years of receipts. I've spent nearly a decade taking care of everyone else. He smiled sadly. Now it's time to take care of myself. No one tried to stop him. As Daniel walked toward the front door, he heard quiet sobs behind him. For years, his silence had protected the people who hurt him. Now, his absence would teach them what his silence had been worth. He stepped outside into the cool night air. For the first time in many years, his shoulders felt lighter. The pain of betrayal still remained, but so did something else, freedom, and sometimes the sweetest revenge wasn't making people suffer. It was allowing them to finally experience life without the person they had always taken for granted. 6 months passed after Daniel walked away from that unforgettable family dinner. For the first time in nearly a decade, every dollar he earned stayed in his own bank account. Instead of paying other people's bills, he invested in himself. The business idea he had postponed for years finally became reality. Using the skills he had developed through countless late nights and overtime shifts, he opened a small financial consulting firm. The beginning wasn't easy, but Daniel had learned something long ago. Hard work always leaves a reward behind. Within months, his reputation spread. Clients appreciated his honesty, discipline, and ability to solve difficult financial problems. The business grew steadily, and before long he hired a small team of employees. For the first time in years, Daniel bought something without feeling guilty. A reliable new car, a bright apartment with large windows, a vacation he had once believed he would never have time to take. Yet none of those things brought him as much peace as waking each morning, without carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations. Meanwhile, life at his mother's house had changed dramatically. Without Daniel's quiet support, every bill arrived with frightening reality. The mortgage payments became difficult to manage. Utility notices piled up on the kitchen counter. His mother began working extra hours, while Ethan contributed as much as he could after finding a stable job. Every payment reminded them of the sacrifices Daniel had made without ever asking for recognition. One rainy afternoon, there was a knock on Daniel's office door. When he opened it, his mother stood outside holding a small photo album. She looked older than he remembered. Not because of age, because of regret. I wasn't sure you'd want to see me, she said softly. Daniel stepped aside. You came all this way. Please come in. She sat quietly before placing the photo album on his desk. Inside were pictures from Daniel's childhood, his first day of school, his soccer games, family birthdays. Between the photographs rested a handwritten letter. I've spent months thinking about everything I said that night, she whispered. But the truth is, I hurt you long before that dinner. Daniel remained silent as she continued. I was so busy comparing you to everyone else that I stopped seeing the incredible man standing in front of me. Tears rolled down her face. I thought success meant expensive cars and impressive titles. I never realized true success was the person who quietly carried an entire family without asking for anything in return. Daniel looked at the letter before meeting her eyes. I waited years to hear those words. I know, she replied through tears. And I'm deeply sorry they came so late. After a long silence, Daniel reached across the desk and gently held her hand. I forgive you, Mom. She broke down crying. But forgiveness doesn't erase the past. Daniel continued kindly. We can't go back to who we were. We can only decide who we become from here. She nodded, understanding that trust would take time to rebuild. As she prepared to leave, she turned toward him one last time. I used to think I lost the son I wanted. She smiled sadly. In truth, I almost lost the son I was blessed to have. Daniel watched her walk away with a heart that finally felt free. His revenge had never been about making his mother suffer. It was about becoming so strong, so successful, and so at peace that the people who once doubted him had no choice but to recognize the value they had overlooked all along. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't proving others wrong, it's proving to yourself that you were enough all along.